So this is a filament sensor out box if the filament runs out, but this one has a side on access for the filament. This is in colour, but here's the settings I'm using. 235 nozzle, 65 on heat bed, silica glass with Elmer's disappearing glue stick on. No supports, no fan for ABS. Right, here's a look in Tinkercad at the box. As you see, there's two here. There's this one for the body. This one here has a 10mm Borden fitting on it. That's only about 4mm deep, that fitting. Basically this one doesn't have that on. That's the only real difference there. So microswitch goes in here, top goes on, hole for wires, some couple of holes in if you want to put 3mm bolt in too. They'll sort of self-tap into there because those are set to 2.5. So the filament sort of goes into this hole, and that lid's put on. Microswitch here with a lever arm. Must have a lever arm on this, which can be bent and adjusted, the lever arm, and then out through there, in this case through, well, it goes through my box that have the filament in, spool in to keep it dry, and then to the Borden fitting and to the Borden tube into the feeding mechanism. As I say, this is just a plain hole in that one for the filament to feed out of. That's it really. This is a filament feed sensor box to put a microswitch in. This is a side entrance, and the one I'm putting here has like some Borden threads on for 10mm diameter threaded Borden fitting. This is to actually fit onto a storage box, so the threads aren't like full depth. But one of the main differences with this design is that the filament actually comes in the side, where normally the filament anyway will come in the edge of the microswitch. Now this is for a levered microswitch, and the filament presses on the lever. You might want to bend the lever a little bit so that it has a smoother run, but I probably won't bother with that. I've done some basic experiments, and the experiments I've done seem to be successful. Just having the filament sort of pressing on the lever of a microswitch and coming from the side. But what I found with my setup is that sometimes the filament moves up and down anyway as it's coming off the spool, off the wheel, and that has give a false trigger. So this basically lines the filament up better as it's going past and stops that happening. So there's two parts of this. There's a body part and there's a lid part. This is about a 1 1/4 hour print, something like that. Don't quote me. I'll try and give the time at the end if I remember. I do have Elmer's glue stick on this borosilicate glass that I'm printing on. Printing in ABS, 235 on the nozzle, 65 on the heat bed. That's an E3D version 6 clone, 0.4 nozzle on there. I think I've got it set to 30% infill. 30% is pretty good. Okay for this. This has quite a thick bottom on the other, this is the lid part here, it's done here, but on the other part, the main part, it sort of has quite a thickish part to allow for the threads of the Bowden fitting. Now this actually will go against the side of my filament storage box. I'll show you that just now. Just let me finish this corner. So just move this light a bit. So this is my filament feeding box here. I have a spool in the back and the filament is coming through, and there is a microswitch already on there, and it goes up a Bowden tube into a Bowden, and that feeds into my feeder, belt drive feeding mechanism, and obviously it comes out of there, comes down, all Bowden feeding system this, and feeds into the E3D version 6 clone hot end. So on this box I have a sort of hydrometer, temperature gauge. This is a moisture absorbent unit that you can plug in the mains, and that warms it up and dries it out when it gets like saturated. It changes colour. There's a display window that changes colour depending how moist it is basically, so that helps keep the filament dry in this box. This is not a pure airtight box, but it's okay. These, you might notice some lines on here. I have put like a thing in here that rests on the spool on the filament. That gives me a gauge by looking at this of the level of the filament still left on the spool. I'll show you inside the box just now. So this is for using an M600 sort of command, a filament out command in Marlin over ramps I'm using. So you can see that the tube coming out here, going up to my belt drive feeding mechanism, which is up there, and then from there down to the hot end. So I'll show you inside the box just now. So I've taken the lid off the box. I'll show you this first. This is just some wood that I've glued together, some wood glue to bend over and rest on the spool here. That goes, there's a couple of balls through the box, one this side, one that side, and a piece of tubing, a piece of pipe. And all that does is go to this, I've only got a piece of coiled wire here. So as the level on the spooling is more, it's higher up, and that, as you see, that goes along this tube and moves this piece of wire there. I have some shrink wrap on there, just to heat shrink wrap to sort of see a bit better. That also helps stop the spool like spinning. But here's the mechanism as I'm using it now. This is a microswitch, and the filament, as you see, is going across the lever on this microswitch. The light a bit. And then out through that boarding fitting, and that boarding fitting is basically coming up there, going to my belt drive feeding mechanism, and then, as I say, coming out the belt drive feeding mechanism down to the E3D version 6 clone hot end down there. So this works quite well. I was worried about the filament actually scraping against this lever here that's on this microswitch, but I think it's okay. If the filament breaks or runs out, obviously that lever will go up, it will signal the VAMPS board, and it will ask to change the filament basically. That's a command in Marlin that you can set up, filament sensing. But this box here will replace this. I've just got some bits of cardboard there to pad it out, because this boarding fitting here does come through this box a little bit. I found out you can screw actually into this, I think it's polyurethane or something. It does screw reasonably well, don't over tighten it. But anyway, that sticks out a little bit, as you see there, so to allow for that I've put some bits of cardboard behind the switch. But what I did find is, on one occasion, this did sort of move up a bit, this filament of the spool here, and it did trigger this. So this box is to sort of, basically it's mainly to guide the filament as it's coming through, and that's why I want a side feeding mechanism. Basically it's just a hole that guides it through across the lever. I'll probably have to shorten this lever actually in my case, and then out through the boarding fitting. So that's the basic concept of this idea. So I've knocked this, mucking about with it like that, I've knocked this outer line a bit. Yeah, so as you see, as I raise and lower the piece of wood, that it just lightly rests on top of the spool here, the wheel of filament, ABS in my case, and that works pretty well. This is the moisture absorbent unit. and that changes colour, that central part, depending how moist it is. Plug it in the mains. When it gets sort of saturated, I do have some bags of silica gel. I tend to shot them in there as well. I'll keep this dry. And there's the one on the box. Oops, that keeps falling down. There's a sort of temperature gauge, moisture level hydrometer. I do have one outside. Notice there's not much difference there. But that might help a bit, keep the filament from absorbing moisture. Some filaments can absorb a lot of moisture, so you have to be consider that, I think. So I'm told. Okay, I'm going to pause the camera now. So about 46 minutes. Probably see the info there when the head gets out the way. So like the roundish hole there is for the Bowden pneumatic fitting to go into from the other side. There's a couple of holes if you want to bolt it on. And there's a lid with a hole for the filament to go through the other side. Well, that's on the inside anyway, it's coming. There are some curves on this, so it's not really curling, it is designed to have some slight curves on. So 46 minutes now, a bit less than halfway. You'll find strings there between the pads. Okay, let's pause the video. I'll come back later on. I might come wait until it's finished actually. Well, it's finished, 1 hour 36 minutes. So it's got a hole there for the filament to come out in a way. Normally the filament would sort of go this way past the switch, but in this case it's going to go edge on to the switch. And there's a hole in my case for a Bowden fitting. That Bowden hole looks a bit messy on the top here. Hole for some wires. A couple of smaller holes to bolt it there, set to 2.5 so you can force a 3mm bolts in. The bed's still warm, so I'm waiting for it to cool down before I even try to remove it. So this is where the sort of microswitch will fit in, leave it going over here, and the filament will come in this way through this hole and out through the Bowden tube and up to the feeding mechanism. That is the plan anyway. I'm not being messiness, which I think will probably clean out. Looks like quite a good print. And let the bed cool, get it off and see how well it fits together, etc. etc. Okay, beds have time to cool. There's a lid. Here's the body part. Yeah, it's getting bits of dark filament in here, so that'll want to look at the state. That not all that good, is it? That hole there. Mind you, it didn't have any supports on this, so that's going to have to be cleaned out or something. Is that big black filament there? Looks like. And this filament has been in use for quite some time, so why am I seeing bits of almost look like black filament in it? See a couple of holes in for bores to go into. So bone feeding coming out there. If I can clean that out. Going into here. That should clip onto there. I'll do that later. See how well it all goes together. Well, here you are. And see, as the filament's going through, it's going to, might have to bend this lever a bit on this microswitch. I had to, this was quite a long one and I had to chop it off a bit. That goes in there, okay. I did have to actually heat an old pneumatic fitting up and almost melt that in a bit, because those threads, as you've seen, didn't come out right, but the other model doesn't have that on anyway. This is really only to go into my box here. Where am I? On that side, because there's the thickness of the box as well and such like. Right, I'll get that connected up. Yeah, the cover goes on, a little bit of filing, a little bit tidying up, and it goes on fine. And there we are. I did have to remove the cover, thread it through the cover. I had to file the hole out as well a bit originally, but I had to remove the cover just to make sure that the filament does go over the top of the lever as it's going through. But basically the idea here is just that hole and the fitting the other side, the bone fitting will sort of guide this filament over the lever, so even if this is moving about a bit, it won't impact on the switch. The only time it'll really impact on the switch is if this sort of breaks, then the lever will move up. It'll trigger the ramps to go into a filament feeding routine. Filament feeding routine sort of withdraws some of the filament up to, well, you can tell it what you want. Then pauses, beeps while it's paused, what gives you a chance to change the filament, put new filament in, sort out any issues, and then it'll sort of feed the filament back through, and it gives you an option of feeding a bit more through if you wish. That's particularly if you want to change colours, for example. There's a colour changing option. So that seems okay. So here is the microswitch version of this unit I've got. So the filament's going in there, it's going across the top of a lever of a microswitch. If the filament breaks or whether the lever will come up and that will signal the ramps. So I'm going to cut this filament part way through this print I'm going to start up just now, and we'll see how well it works. So I'll be doing various switching cameras about, etc, etc. Right, I'm going to pause the video a bit until I get to about layer 4, say. So here it is, printing a cube. We've got layer 4, 4.1. As I say, here's the filament going in. Got some cutters. I want to cut it quite close because I don't want to be waiting too long. Light there, a bit awkward for me here, so I've heard a click there. I think that's filament actually going through. That's probably it, I just heard it. And see, It's raising the nozzle, moving it over, and it makes a beep noise on the LCD 12864. You can probably see a message there. So now quite normal in Marlin, it will do a sort of unload where the filament will go back, but I ask it not to do this because I don't want the filament actually pushing back, because I have a bone feeding in here and I don't want that pushing back through this switch mechanism basically. So I ask for a zero sort of unload, as it's known as in Marlin. Right, I'm going to actually feed the filament. I'll have to get rid of this filament out this tube manually and like reinsert the filament. I'll come back when I've done this and we'll ask it to continue. Make sure you put the plate back on, sometimes it's easy to forget. That's what basically lines up the filament. And I'm about to press the restart button. Well, press this like control button that's here. Press that. Heat nozzle, because I've been waiting a bit. I think it's turned off the nozzle, but I think it keeps the nozzle like alive in a way, going at the heat like you set it to for a while. But if you take too long, then it will switch it off and like shut it down. So we'll have to wait for that to warm up. And then it's big. Press the button, and as you see, it's starting back up, and it's going back to where. It's going back to where it sort of finished off and continuing on with the print. So obviously I could have changed colour there. There is a setting under the commands. If you go under tune, you can select to change filament. So you can change colours, change types of filament, whatever you want to do there. And now it's feeding back in over the top of this microswitch, so it's getting a signal, yep, the filament's okay, and it's continuing on with the print. Right, I'll come back when this is finished actually, and we'll see how well it's done. Well, there we are, it's time to cool. Let's have a look at the display to show you. I'll turn this LED off because it doesn't otherwise. So hopefully you can see there, 15 minutes, that's about normal time. It doesn't include the time that we it was paused and I was reloading the filament. So let's have a bit of a close look at this cube, just a calibration cube. Try and get this on macro.